So again, it's not overly structured. It's going to be very relaxed, but I want this to be a really great experience for everybody. How many of you been to Africa? Oh, here, you guys do the presentation. That's awesome. So that's great to hear, because much of what I'm going to talk about will probably relate in some ways. And for those of you that haven't been, hopefully you'll be inspired to go one day. But for most people, it is the bucket list trip. It's that epic destination, that exciting, that exotic place that everybody wants to go and encounter those amazing wildlife experiences. I've been so many times, I can't even tell you how many times I've been there, but it's still a bucket list destination for me. I call it little buckets within the big bucket, you know? And every time I go, there's like these little buckets of things that I still want to do. There's so many places that are in the world that are just truly epic and incredibly beautiful. But there's something about Africa that just, you know, we're lucky that our clients are well-traveled. They all come back and they consistently say it was the most incredible experience that they've ever had. And Africa has a way of doing that. It's hard to describe it. Those of you who've been there, you know what I'm talking about. But there's just something in the air, the people, the culture. So for most, it is that true bucket list destination. And for most, they'll go once in their lives. And if it really bites you, you'll go many times, like me. And you'll make a career out of it. Together, we're going to discuss what exactly is a safari. How does conservation benefit from an African safari vacation? And how do local communities benefit from when people choose an African safari vacation? So we'll talk a little bit about that. As I always say, you know, many of our guests and many of you that are here now, I'm sure when you left Africa, you took so much away with you in terms of memories, your experiences. But oftentimes what guests don't know is they've actually left a lot more behind. And I'm going to share exactly what that means in terms of visiting and vacationing in beautiful Africa. So what is a safari? The term safari actually is a Swahili word that means to travel, but by default, it's become, most people associate it with going to Africa and seeing wildlife. And that's okay, but we can do a lot of different safaris. We can leave here and have a cheese safari, a beer safari, pizza safari, and a wine drive safari, which I might even share with you guys a little bit later on. But the true term of a safari is to travel. But by default, for most people, when you say safari, you're referring to going to Africa and seeing amazing and intimate wildlife experiences. For most, it's about seeing wildlife and wild places. Oh, yes, sir. Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate it. Can you dim the lights just a little bit? Thank you so much. Is that better? Okay. So the term safari, for most, it's about seeing wildlife and wild places. And that's not a lion eating its baby cub. That's a mother carrying its little baby cub from point A to point B. And staying in beautiful places and truly magical places. Or maybe it's the calmness of wide open spaces. A safari can mean so many different things for so many different people. Every country is different. Every landscape is different. Every ecosystem is different. Every culture is different. The people are different. And that's what makes going to Africa such a magical place. In a nutshell, it's a way to experience a unique connection with nature and wildlife, unlike any other place in the world. There are very few places where if you go to a true authentic safari concession or a camp, where you'll be able to see and experience wildlife in such close proximity in its true habitat. Just being in the bush, Africa has a way of just being transformative and having that transformative effect on people. The environment just helps us strip away our built-in defenses, allows us to be a bit vulnerable in a way that is incredibly personal, powerful, and truly healing. And there's just something, there's a humility that comes with being in Africa, the place where we originally all come from, actually. And plain and simple, it's an impactful destination. And I'm going to share with you what exactly that means. Here's a clip of what I mean when I say magical and precious. This is a recent safari I was on about 18 months ago. Maybe from here to the wall. Can you tell who's going to be the alpha male when he gets older? I mean, all right. So before we continue, I'm going to take you to Africa. I need to get Africa. For those of you that have been there, and those of you hopefully will go in the future, I need to get Africa running through your veins. I need it to be in your mind. I need to place you into Africa. And that's where we're going to go right now. So please, if you wouldn't mind, put your seatbelts on. It's not going to be a 24-hour flight. No passports are required. I'll have you right back in 3 minutes. Without further ado. Africa is a feeling. It's something when you're here, it's a feeling where you taste it, you touch it, you smell it. It is an emotionally impactful destination.
There's so many amazing and wonderful things here that you don't realize until you get here, and you're like, wow, you're just totally blown away by the culture, the people, the scenery, the experiences, and everything that you can have.
For some, it's the animals. They come for the animals, and then they experience so much more. The animals bring you in, but places like the Zambezi or Victoria Falls, the winelands, or engaging the Masai Mara and being part of their culture experiences. That's the beauty of Africa, is that it's diverse. Typically, most clients walk away going, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea how much there was to do and see beyond just the safari. East Africa and Southern Africa. No two experiences are really going to be the same. In East Africa, it's going to be big, wide open plains, or we have the cosmopolitan coastal city of Cape Town. The diversity of so many offerings in terms of landscape, cultures, it's going to create a completely different experience each and every time. When guests come to Africa, they're going to have the most incredible experience of their life, an experience that they'll never forget. Welcome back. That still gives me goosebumps till today. I mean, I've watched it a million times, and we brought a videographer here from Michigan. I'm always big about, supporting those from my home state, and this gentleman is one of the top videographers, and he just knows how to bring the goosebumps in people. And so hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of a little bit about Africa. You know, for those of you that have been there, hopefully that brought back some great memories. For those of you that haven't, I hope that got you a little bit inspired. exactly what is conservation and community uplift? The term conservation, look, if I came in here just to talk about conservation, believe me, nobody would show up, all right? It's like watching grass grow and watching paint dry. But it is an important element to the safari. So behind the fun and behind all those exciting moments, everyone that goes to Africa is playing a key role in conservation. Conserving and expanding natural habitats, number one. The fight against poaching, which is completely out of control. Educating local communities and its people about the importance of wildlife, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Creating low-impact, sustainable photographic tourism in former hunting or agricultural land. Using sustainable methods and uplifting the local communities through the power of tourism. If you don't support the communities, they will kick you out. There has to be a benefit to the local communities and to the villages. That's how safaris work. That's how wildlife and expanding the natural habitat works, is that the communities and the people that reside in those areas have to benefit from this. So I call this conservation and uplifting communities behind the bubbles. Those bubbles all play a role. Now, this is Royal Shendu Lodge. It's a beautiful luxury lodge upstream from Victoria Falls, right on the mighty Zambezi River. It's a first-class place. The owner, Tina Aponte, she's just one of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. This is what we go for. This is the reason we go, to have this magical experience after a long day, to come back. And I did go in that tub. That was my room, actually, twice. On both days, and to have that scene set up for you. But the people behind that, and that's why I call it conservation behind the bubbles, you've impacted them in so many ways that most people don't really even realize in terms of the benefit that they take away. This is from the menu, and I just want to quickly read it to kind of give you an idea. Royal Shendu sources as many fresh supplies within a 4-kilometer radius of the lodge in order to include community involvement with the added benefit of maximizing freshness and taste for our valued guests. That means within a 2.5-mile radius, they source as much as they possibly can to support the local villages and the local communities so that they have a benefit as part of tourism. This is Edith. I had the pleasure to spend about 2 hours with Edith. She's one of the village elders in her local village. And even though I went into this with a fair amount of knowledge in terms of how community upliftment and community benefits work when you go on safari, I still learned a great deal from her. This is her garden. So what Edith said was, everybody has their own garden, and we don't grow the same crops. Everybody grows something differently so that we all benefit. I'm not growing onions and my neighbor's not growing onions, so we're not competing against each other. She grows onions, I grow lettuce, someone grows maize or corn, and we all benefit from the tourism that comes and buys their fresh vegetables and other sources. So this is Edith's family garden. Edith said, you know, Jay, this is probably the best example of tourism. Before tourism supported our communities, before people like yourself came to Africa and stayed in these lodges and provided a direct benefit to our village, we couldn't build a structure quite to this extent. And then you can't really see it. She says, now we have nails. She says, something as simple as nails. She says, now we can afford to buy nails and build a more solid structure for our homes. Whereas before we had to use reeds and tie it. And every couple years, or maybe depends on the season, we'd have to rebuild our homes consistently and more regularly because the structure just wasn't the same. But something as what we take for granted, nails. I mean, we're talking nails. That's all it is, nails. You know, I mean, we have drills, power saws. For them, a nail makes a huge difference, just simply through tourism, because they have the employment. Whereas in the past, nails was a luxury. Okay, and they were going to eat first before they went and bought nails, and they figured out other ways to build their home. So she pointed this out. This is actually a nicer home. You can tell that this is somebody that works in the tourism industry. They're building a bigger home for their family, and a home that's, you know, it's got the tin roof, it's got nails, it'll still have mud, but this is a direct benefit from what I call community upliftment behind the bubbles, if you will. Then she showed me their living conditions. She said, Jay, before we used to sleep on the floor, which wasn't as comfortable. Now, because we have nails, we can actually build a raised structure of a bed. So She took the time to explain to me a little bit about their bed. Edith, tell me about your traditional bed, your sleeping bed.
Yeah, this is the bed. Then we have got this one as a mattress. We have got this one as a mattress cover. And then we have got this one. We just fold another ridge mat to make a pillow.
Very cool.
That's the
Very,
the
very
bed.
cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Edith.
Then from there, this is still the
Very nice. So again, something is now. I thought it was comfortable. Now for us, you know, again, their cultures, their custom, this is a luxury for them. The ability that, again, something as simple as nails allows them to build a better bed off the floor, a little bit more comfortable. So this is, while it's small, may not be a big deal to us, it's a big deal for them. And that's a direct benefit as a result of tourism. And it's just a quick snapshot of their village and one of their neighbors. This is a water tank. She said, Jay, this water tank was donated to us by a guest that came and visited our village. And she asked us how we get water into our village. And she said, I explained to the guest that we go to the river every day and we fetch water and we bring it back to the village. And the guest felt that there had to be a better way of doing that. And they were generous enough to build this water tank and make it easier for them. And what Edith said was, you know, we do have fires, and you know, this water tank has really made our lives easier to water our crops, just water for, you know, to bathe, water to drink. She said before, if we had a fire, we had to run to the village, and by the time you got to the village with the bucket on your head, half the water already spilled out. So she said that, you know, this is a direct benefit of tourism. And, you know, through someone's generosity, they built a water tank for them that runs directly to the river. So it pulls water from the Zambezi and keeps the tank full. That's me, enjoying a really good G&T, gin and tonic. There's something about gin and tonics in Africa. They always taste better. But this gentleman on the left is from that village. He lives in that village. That is his village. The village is only about 2 miles away or less from the lodge. This gentleman, probably just a few years ago, didn't have nearly the education that he has today. He explained to me all the intricate details of a 7-course wine pairing dinner. The wines, the tannins, where the grapes came from, the style of wine, the food that it's paired with. And he makes a hell of a G&T, let me tell you. You know, and this is where you go, you know, just a few years ago, he didn't know a Cabernet from a Fabernet, a Chardonnay from a Barbernay, okay? And this is the benefit of tourism, that you're able to uplift communities and educate them in ways that they may never have that opportunity. He's never going to be most likely in the big city, but yet now he is impacting so many guests that he's looking after from all over the world, from here in Michigan to throughout our beautiful country and world. And most of the staff here, he was my ranger. She was also looking after us during meal service. The housekeeping staff, they all benefit from tourism. Their lives have been impacted and uplifted. They can afford an education. They have young families. They can send their kids to school. They can buy uniforms for their kids. So this is a direct benefit of going to Africa and being on a safari. Edith said to me, tourism did not change our culture or way of life. It just helped improve it and make it a little easier. So they didn't abandon their culture. They still pulled dyes from their trees, used the trees for medicine and soaps. So their way of life is still the same. It's just tourism helped benefit them so that it's a little bit easier. Again, what does this have to do with conservation? Well, for most of us, we get to enjoy these amazing experiences. Canoeing on the mighty Zambezi, enjoying a beautiful room that looks over the river. But what's really important about this picture here is that bicycle. We just recently had a guest here from the Metro Detroit area, a wonderful lady. She's a prominent figure in the business community, a very generous lady. And she said, Jay, we're going to go to Africa, but I want my kids to get out of their bubble, if you will, a little bit. I want them to see and be immersed in a different culture. We want to visit schools. We want to visit villages. So this is also in the Victoria Falls area in Zambia. And African bush camps, they just opened up a new lodge. It's about a little over a year old. And they didn't have a community yet that they were impacting through tourism. So they wanted to find a village that had no benefit as a result of tourism. And they found it. I mean, it's deep. I mean, it's like so remote. And we went out there. And our client, Allison, learned that these kids, after the 8th grade, most of them, like 90%, never finished school because the distance to go to school was so far that it just was unaffordable. They don't have transportation, so after the 8th grade, they drop out and they stay home. And that to her was, that to her was, not something she was going to allow to happen after experiencing this beautiful village. So she bought bikes for all the 8th graders getting ready to go into the 9th grade. Those bikes play such a key role. In the mornings when these kids wake up, they have to take care of the family first. It's family first, then school. That's just the way it is. You fetch water, you get everything cleaned up, you get the livestock sorted out, you get everything taken care of. That process used to take far longer in the past. With a bike now, as simple as something that we'd probably take for granted, that bike plays such a meaningful role in uplifting those families and uplifting that community and allowing these kids to continue their education. So this was, it makes us feel good. All this happens organically. We don't ever push it on anybody. Africa and all the communities benefit just by simply going on safari. But when you hear stories like this, it is a good feeling because we know we've made a difference, and ultimately that's really what it's about. Did I skip one? This village, as you can see, is a little bit different than the last village. They're finally starting to receive a little bit of a benefit through tourism. This is the local blacksmith. So he's probably one of the members of the community that has a slightly better lifestyle, if you will, from some of the other members because he's the fix-it-all guy. He's the blacksmith. He fixes everything. He makes everything. Oh, there we go.
Until it's red hot. Then when it's red hot, you would hammer it. And then
So he's basically just showing me like the air to blow the coals.
or any other thing.
So remember that house I was telling you about with the nails? Well, this community doesn't benefit from nails. That's still a luxury that's not affordable for them. So this is what Edith was referring to, that they still have to use reeds in order to build their structures, which doesn't provide that same level of support. So this is a good example of what Edith was talking about and how they've benefited, and hopefully one day this village and community will benefit the same way. This is the lodge as a result of staying at that lodge. A percentage of their revenue from every bed night goes towards supporting this village. This is a small little medical clinic that they're building for them. Right now, if a woman is pregnant or someone's sick, they have to go 6-7 miles to get to the local clinic to get treatment. Now they're building one. Actually, it should be done now since the last time I was there because the rainy season's about to start. Yes, sir?
What kind of trees are those back there?
I'm not 100% certain, to be honest with you, but yeah, I can certainly find out for you. Yeah, I'm not sure about those ones. I want to say it's not a jackalberry. This is Allison again. Their trip had started in Arusha, in the Serengeti, the gateway to the Serengeti, and she also wanted to visit a school. Now, as you can see, the classrooms are slightly larger there. I think this particular teacher has 115 kids in her classroom that she has to teach. And on this particular day, there was a government holiday, so the kids were not going to get lunch. So she said, okay, we need to feed the kids. There's no way I'm going to be here, participate with the kids. So our private guide went into town. I think they bought every loaf of bread, every peanut butter, every jelly. They went to 7 stores. They said they find enough peanut butter, enough jelly, enough bread to come back and provide lunch for the kids. But the school needed some technology equipment. And this is one of the pieces of equipment that they found that day. It's kind of multi-purpose so that the teacher can teach The kids in the back, they don't benefit. They're too far back versus the kids in the front, and it's hard for her to teach the kids in the back. So again, through her generosity, she made a significant impact. I just spoke to her, and she said now her kids are raising money to buy more bikes for that school here in the Metro Detroit area. I think their kids go to Birmingham Brother Rice. I think it's a multi-purpose photocopier, projector. It does a number of different things. I love school visits whenever I'm in Africa. I would encourage anybody, if you go to Africa, visit a community, visit a village, visit a school. They're incredible. There's such a purity that comes from kids. They always welcome you. They're always happy. They uplift me. I mean, I'm thinking I'm uplifting them. They're actually uplifting me. This school has a project just to build a desk. I mean, it's something as simple as a desk that we take for granted. For $60, you can go to a local craftsman in the area, and he'll build a desk for that particular school. I'm not sure if you can hear what they were saying, but they're saying, today is today, tomorrow is a liar. So meaning today, enjoy today, because you have it now, you know what's happening, make the most of it, because the weatherman says it's going to be sunny tomorrow, but it's snowing, so it's a liar, So don't pin your hopes on tomorrow, make the most of today. I always love that song. We talked about a lot of big things and in how one can impact in big ways. But sometimes it's the smallest things that have the biggest impact. Something as a small little lantern light, solar-powered light that we can go to Home Depot right now and buy for $3, $4, $5, okay? Now these kids go to school. They're lucky enough to get a solid education. They're provided with reading materials. But what happens when they come home? They don't have electricity. They can't read, so they have to use either candles or paraffin lanterns, which are always dangerous, which leads to fires and other dangers. So something like this makes a huge impact. So, clients come to us all the time. I mean, we're not, they'll say, Jay, I don't have a $50,000 checkbook to write to do something massive, but I got a couple crumpled $20 bills in my pocket. What can I do? Well, let's get a few of those. That's what they can do. It's not always about the big things. Something as simple as a solar lantern, a pair of boots, tires to a vehicle, a shirt. These are all little things that help these communities and allows the foundations to use their bigger part of their budget for the bigger things. So a big impact can come in small packages. And something as a little bit of light improved the memory knowledge of those kids by 25 to 30%. So they're better for it. They're able to study. They're able to do their homework. The community benefits from it. So something we take for granted is really a big deal in Africa, in many parts of Africa, I should say. So what about the parents? This is another school, and we've been to the school on a couple occasions, and we've been lucky enough to have some generous guests that have sponsored kids to pay for their school. This school started purely, it's a lodge that started the school for the staff members' kids so that the staff members' kids can get an education. And it just grew. Guests would come and donate $50, $100, $1,000, whatever it is. Next thing you know, there's 200 some kids. Some of these kids have grown to be accountants, doctors, lawyers. But the issue was the parents. The parents, they didn't have an education. They couldn't teach their kids. They couldn't do homework with their kids. So now, as a result of the growth of the school, now they're educating the parents so that the parents can spend time with their kids and do the math and do the reading. And another impact and benefit as a result of tourism. Now we're going to move a little bit onto wildlife and talk about conservation in terms of expanding natural habitats, protecting wildlife. Great Plains Foundation and Great Plains Conservation is probably one of the premier examples in terms of providing conservation and I lost my track of mind, excuse me. Conservation for wildlife and community upliftment. They have devoted their entire life to this. The owners of Great Plains Conservation is Derek and Beverly Jobert. You may not know them by name, but you might have seen their films. When you watch National Geographic, a lot of those wildlife documentaries are filmed by Derek and Beverly Jobert. So they're filmmakers, they're conservationists, they have some amazing safari camps. Every nickel from their safari camp, not one penny from all their investors and from them, every bit goes back into conservation. They pay the staff first, they take care of the expenses, and everything else goes directly into conservation. Not one dividend goes back as profit. Their sole purpose is to expand the natural habitat. Their sole purpose is to protect wildlife. Their sole purpose, those endangered species, to hopefully repopulate and regrow the population of many of the endangered species, elephants, rhinos, and lions in particular. I'm going to show you a couple videos. Derek and Beverly started what's called Rhinos Without Borders. Rhinos were being poached at a rate of about over 1,000 per year. In the next 10 years, they were going to be extinct. They were not reproducing fast enough at a rate that they were being poached. They were being poached for their horns. The value of their horn has grown to be more valuable than diamonds, cocaine, most expensive beluga caviar, and anything else you could think of. That this belief that what is the same thing as our nail or our hair provides all these medical and sexual benefits that doesn't even exist, okay? They will probably go down in history as saving the rhino species single-handedly for what they've done. This is a program we're a part of. We donate a percentage of our profits every month towards Rhinos Without Borders. I need to go over there because the next slide is a YouTube video and wasn't working with the clicker, so don't want to take a chance. Just warning, there's a couple of graphic scenes in there. They're about a second or two, but just didn't want anybody to be completely blindsided.
You know, we wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for this ridiculous myth that rhino horn actually has some sort of medical value. It's a complete myth. It's like saying chewing your fingernails will cure your cancer. It's ridiculous. And in fact, that's what's so infuriating and what drives part of our lives is we've got a poaching problem. Rhinos are being killed at a rate of 1 every 7.5 hours. If you look at statistics of poaching, it's easy to become depressed about them. 1,215 rhinos were killed in South Africa last year. Given that there are only 20,000 of these rhinos left, that's terrifying. But we really wanted to be a part of that solution. So we started Great Plains Foundation primarily to protect enough land so that we can then save these big iconic species. If we protect lions and elephants and rhinos, everything works in Africa.
And by focusing right now on rhinos, it's allowing us to protect everything, right down to the tiny little dung beetles.
And so that's where we formed Rhinos Without Borders.
And then a couple of years ago, we were able to go back to the president and say, now's the time to move these animals back into the wild. And what we're doing here is moving 100 rhinos out of the highest poaching areas in South Africa and move them to the lowest poaching areas, which are in Botswana, over the next 18 months.
To move one rhino, it costs about $45,000 US, and that is including the security, the veterinarians. We've got to have professionals at all times. So many people are putting their lives to trying to protect these rhinos. And also what's important to know is we're not going to be fencing them in at all.
We're going to be setting them free. We've spoken about getting these numbers up to 400, maybe 500, and making Botswana at least the second most significant rhino country in Africa. If we can get the conservation right in Botswana, this is a model that can roll out through the rest of Africa.
If we can get the global population to be part of this, I believe we can turn this around, that there is immense hope.
We've actually reached 100. So that video was produced a little over a year ago. Yes, sir.
If the corn is so valuable, why wouldn't the poachers go to Botswana? What's the difference? Geographically, I could see it, but
Great question. That's a really awesome. I'm really glad you asked that question. Let me just quickly get back on track here. It's a really good question. I'll explain to you why. Botswana is the most stable African country, number one. In the next slide, you're going to see a gentleman sitting on the passenger side of a helicopter. And that's the former president of Botswana. About 4 years ago, he made a statement, and he was very loud and clear about it. He said, if you're going to come to Botswana to poach our wildlife, please bring some identification with you. We want to be able to identify your bodies to your families. It was very controversial, but the message was very loud and clear. It is the most stable government. 60% of the country is devoted to wildlife. It's a beautiful ecosystem. I highly recommend visiting the Okavango Delta in Botswana. They only have a population of about 2 million people. They have a very stable economy. Their GDP is very good for Africa. Employment is good, but it still comes down to the government. The government has such a pro-wildlife approach. And their approach is, we're not going to take, it's quite frankly black or white. Don't come here. If you're going to take a chance, we're not going to mess around, okay? We're going to protect our wildlife. They know what wildlife means to that country. It's a big, big part of the income that they generate. So it's for that reason why the difference between South Africa, the governments play a big role. In South Africa, they don't have a, hate to say, shoot on the spot. They have to give warnings. They're worried about the legal system, and it's a little bit more corrupt. I hate to put it that way, but there's probably people that are benefiting from allowing rhino poaching to happen. So that's the biggest reason.
follow-up, is the habitat as advantageous for the rhinos as it was in South Africa? And if that were the case, wouldn't they just migrate?
Rhinos don't migrate, they're territorial. They stay in a particular geographic area. I was just in Botswana, and the next video I think shows one of the areas where rhinos were moved. And I saw rhinos for the first time in Botswana. They're reproducing now. They've easily adapted. The ecosystem is such that it's very adaptable. Rhinos used to exist in Botswana. There used to be rhinos, and then the hunting industry and poaching back a long time wiped them out. But the current government, when they gained independence back in the 60s, they've kind of became a very pro-wildlife country. Yes, ma'am?
I know Kenya has a shoot to kill too, but they moved for conservation 10 rhinos about 4 or 5 months ago, and they killed 9 of them. They put them in an area where they ate salt. That took them out. But they said the Asia and China are buying these, and you cannot stop that when an income is $800 average, and then you can kill these animals, and China will pay for it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, they're going after somebody that's, extremely desperate. For $500 for them, they'll take every chance, possible to go and kill that rhino. But we're making progress. There's still a lot of work to be done. I think this past year was the first net gain where more rhinos were reproduced versus those that were poached. So, but I think Derek and Beverly, who you saw in the beginning of the video, will go down in history for saving the rhino species, among other species. They own Great Plains Conservation. Their camps are amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. Where their camps sit, some of the most incredible wildlife. But again, for them, they're buying and purchasing large tracts of land to expand that wildlife habitat. The other issue we have here is human encroachment. The population's growing, and the wildlife space is shrinking. So that's the other issue that we have. So we're trying to expand that habitat. I'm going to show you one more video on with regards to Rhinos Without Borders. Yes, ma'am.
I'm confused. I'm sorry. One of the first scenes we saw was a chainsaw to a horn. So are these the good guys or the bad guys?
No, those are good guys. So there's two organizations, and it's, there's two different perspectives in terms of how to protect the rhinos. The issue is the horn. That's what they're going for, right? So some say, let's just cut the horns off. If we cut the horns off, the rhinos live. It regrows, okay? Granted, it's not the best thing for the rhino. I mean, that horn is used for a lot of for defense, for digging, for a number of different things. But if it's the difference between life or death, some say we just can't spend any more money on anti-poaching. I mean, we have the drones, we have the helicopters, we have manpower on the ground, we have we're doing everything we can. They're still figuring out a way to get to our rhinos. So if we cut the horn, we eliminate the temptation. I don't know what's the right answer, to be honest with you. The Botswana is working. Okay, so there's Anbion and Great Plains. They were working together. Anbion's position was to cut the horns. I get it. If it means saving the rhino, it's understandable. It's a good argument. Moving the Botswana has also worked. Some say flood the market. There's rhino farmers out there. They have 1,000 rhinos. They farm rhinos and then they sell them to safari lodges and to national parks. Some say flood the market with rhino horns. Flood it. Bring the value of the rhino horn down. Some say no way. Then we're giving in. So it's a very complicated topic. The Botswana relocation is working. I saw it firsthand. I just saw it a few weeks ago. It was amazing to see rhinos. They're all chipped, so you know where they are. They're protected 24 hours a day. There's anti-poaching that like nearby. So it is working. There's still a lot of work to do, but as you can see, it's a shame what's been happening. But this is where tourism is benefiting. Tourism is helping. Every bed night, every guest that stays at some of these safari camps, they contribute to that. I met somebody from Cleveland, Ohio, a couple of years ago, and he must have made a substantial donation. Whether you make $5 donation or make a $100,000 donation, it all helps. he must have made at least 90,000 because he got to be part of the rhino location. So if you donate 45,000, you get to name a rhino. If you donate, so if you donate 90,000, you can be part of the relocation. And over a couple bottles of wine, and he was starting to open up a little bit. He was telling me, Jay, he says, I can't even put it to words. He says, I've been lucky enough in life and made a lot of money. I wanted to be part of something that was going to be impactful. I can give back. And he says, we're part of this relocation. Every stinking thing that can go wrong went wrong. You saw those trucks like going through the water. Says trucks were getting stuck. I had to bring, support in to get us out. The rhinos were freaking out. We opened up one of the rhino. The mother rhino left. She abandoned the baby rhino. Now we're chasing the mother rhino, trying to find the mother rhino. We found the mother. We found the baby. Now she wants nothing to do with the baby. She's abandoning the baby. We're all crying. He's telling me all these things that happen, and it's truly impactful. But like I said, whether it's just going on safari has a significant impact. This is the impact that tourism plays, both directly and indirectly. Hey, kill that again. Thank you.
So the rhinos, do they work in packs? Are they a community animal?
Not really. They're territory. You may have 3 or 4 that'll be together, and sometimes you might have, a crash of rhinos, 8 or 9. They're kind of from the same bloodline. Usually there's one dominant male in the area. So with rhinos, it's really interesting. If you go on safari, if another male walks into the territory of a dominant male, he is to poop in a certain area. So this is text messaging, okay, back in the day. And it's him saying, hey, as a courtesy to you, I am letting you know I'm just going through your area. I'm here. It's cool. Just letting you know. And this is how they communicate. They communicate through their poop, If he doesn't do that, and he finds that poop, and they create like these little zones, like it's like a pooping zone. You'll see them throughout. They dig these like holes, and they can sniff out. Females leave their messages there. Hey, I'm interested. What are you doing tonight? Come on by. Give me a call. Maybe we can, eat some grass together. That's how they communicate. So generally, there'll be one dominant male in the territory. Other males can traverse through the area, but they have to communicate with the dominant male. But you'll see anywhere from like 1 or 2. Maybe a mother and a baby, a male and a female, up to a crash of 6 or 7.
So is that initially smell male?
Yes, you could say that.
What happened with the mother and the baby?
Eventually, the mother reaccepted the baby. So the mother, it took some time, and it's such a traumatic experience for those rhinos. I mean, there was another, I didn't want to overdo it with the videos, but one of the videos, they get uplifted by a helicopter. So they're literally strapped, they're upside down, and they're airlifted from the airstrip to where they're going to be relocated. You just can't drive to some of these areas. If you have like a wet ecosystem, you just can't do it. So, excuse me?
Why upside down?
Apparently that's the best way to do it. I think it's easier to tie up with 4 legs, and it's safer for the rhino versus trying to carry the rhino from its underbelly.
Are they moving rhinos in Zimbabwe as well?
No. Zimbabwe is not as, Zimbabwe is changing now, right? They just ousted the dictator. I was just in Zimbabwe, and kind of funny story. Zimbabwe is on the U.S. dollar. That's their currency. Their currency many years ago devalued. And I was crossing from Botswana to Zimbabwe, and I was generously tipping, and I wasn't paying attention how much cash I needed. So I was like, I better check to see. I need at least $50 to buy a visa. And that's exactly what I had, was $50. I mean, like 48 good pieces of currency and 2 really crumpled up ones that I was trying to straighten out. And I get to Zimbabwe, and I said to the guy, I said, can we stop an ATM? He says, we can stop at an ATM, Jay. There just won't be anything in there. He says, there's no cash in the country right now. So Zimbabwe is getting better. Actually, one of the areas that Great Plains is expanding is Zimbabwe. They just purchased big, large tracts of land in a couple areas, one inside the Zambezi National Park and as well as in the northern part of Zimbabwe. So it is getting better. There is some rhinos, but not a lot. Yeah. So hopefully one day, Zimbabwe will grow their rhino population.
When you say purchasing large plots of land, are you talking about, essentially purchasing a concession within a national park, or are they buying up land?
That's a great question. So Mana Pools, for example, is a national park. Mana Pools National Park is in northern Zimbabwe. The land next to it was always a hunting concession, okay? And the operators of that hunting concession, for whatever reason, the government said this is no longer a hunting concession, so then they put it out to an RFP or a tender, as they refer to, okay? They come in and they work with the local communities in combination with the government. And they say to the local communities that you're gonna benefit 3 times more from what you made via hunting. We're gonna employ more people, we're gonna build infrastructure, and we're gonna lease this land for the next 20 to 30 years from you. And this land is gonna be an extension of the national park. It'll be a private concession meaning, you know, you can go off-roading, do night drives, you can have more of an intimate experience with the animals. And we're gonna rehabilitate those animals to not be scared of seeing vehicles. Because if you've been to a hunting concession, animals know, you know, they're skittish, you know. So that's what they're doing, is they're purchasing and leasing large tracts of land directly from the community. So every member of that community is benefiting from that lease, and they're also going to benefit from the employment that they're going to gain. And that's what they're doing. Agricultural lands. Actually, we'll get to that part. It'll make a lot more sense. Can we dim the lights again just a little bit? Thank you, Teresa. Let's see where we're at here. Now what we're going to talk about, to your point, ma'am, is working with local communities. There's a lot of places that have tribes. The Maasai in East Africa, it has always been a rite of passage for them to kill a lion with their bare hands before you go into adulthood. And the elders of the Maasai community said, okay, we're getting bigger and there's less lions. I think we need to change one of our cultures, okay? And we're going to get into that and how they have readapted, and instead of killing a lion for manhood, they have created other programs. But one of the cool experiences of going to Africa is experiencing different cultures, especially tribal cultures. And most tribal cultures are in the northeast, like Kenya and Tanzania. So this was a video that we produced. Just like when I took you to Africa, I'm going to take you to some tribal cultures, and then we're going to come right back. A visit to East Africa is as much about a tribal and cultural experience as it is about the wildlife. Whether it be the Hadzabis, the Togas, or the very well-known Maasai people. Sometimes we'll meet some of the Masai Warriors and allow our guests to take part in a bit of a walk with the Maasai and allow you to absorb a little bit of the sights and sounds and the senses, and do it with these true Masai warriors who will educate you a little bit about the land as you walk into their village and introduce you to their village and to their people.
Coming up upon this hill and you hear the sounds of their voices singing to their traditional songs. You come upon it and it's just such an overwhelming, emotional experience to know that I'm in a part of the world that they're still living authentically to their roots. And knowing that we're welcome into that and they want to show you how they do live, it's very overwhelming. It's a very fascinating experience. It's very humbling, to be honest.
Our cultural experiences are always a private guided experience, and we always ensure that it's an authentic experience, one that's not plastic or overly touristy. So our guests and our clients will get a true sense of how these different tribal cultures live, how they go about their day, the roles of the men, the roles of the women, the roles of the children, and how the village operates and functions as a community. And they have a lot of excitement about them. They have a great energy, especially in their celebrations. The singing, the dancing, the jumping, which is a big part of their tradition. They'll teach you about that, and they'll explain to you why they do it, which our guests and our clients absolutely love. It's fun, it's exciting, it's intoxicating. It's hard not to get caught up in it because it's just such a positive energy when you're there, and it's emotionally impactful.
It's their way of life. It's amazing. And it's just so simple and so pure to know that that's still a part of the world that we live in.
I love tribal cultures, just like I love visiting communities and schools. I love being with like different tribes. There's 3 different tribes there. You had the semi-nomadic, the Maasai. They're the most famous, very colorful. They're the biggest. Then there's the Datogas and the Hadzabis. The Hadzabis are raw, and I loved it. I mean, they are as nomadic as they come. They have not changed in over 2,000 years. They live in the most primitive conditions. They eat anything. They'll drink anything. There's no hierarchy among them. Nobody's in charge. It's all about, they're true hunter-gatherers. Hunt, gather, gorge, smoke weed. That's their whole life. That's their whole life. So when I was in the southern Serengeti, the general manager of the lodge was explaining to us that we're going to meet with the Hadzabi. We let them come into our concession only to gather, and they can only kill birds. That's it. We don't let them kill anything else. I mean, they see a baboon, they think it's steak. They love it. And I said, well, how many are coming? He said, we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know how much weed they smoked the night before. You know, like you can get 4, you can get 24. You know, it's hard to tell. And they were fascinating. I mean, they didn't care that we were there. They just wanted to gather. They wanted to forage, get roots, get some honey from the trees. They let us just kind of walk with them and hunt, and it was fascinating. I watched them go and drink out of a watering hole. God knows what's in there. It's like nothing, you know. Very fascinating. But the Maasai, they had to change their way of life, simply because for 2 reasons. One was the rite of passage to adulthood and killing a lion, and overgrazing. Cattle is wealth to the Maasai. The more cattle you have, the wealthier you are, the more prestigious you are. So in order to grow with conservation, we had to, they created what's called the Maasai Olympics. Oops. And I'll show you exactly what this now replaces having to kill a lion. So chasing medals instead of chasing lions is what they call it. Males. So with the Maasai, in Kenya's Masai Mara, in order to grow and expand a habitat there, they went to a lot of these villages. They said, look, you're overgrazing and you're killing wildlife, because they don't have the same appreciation for an elephant or a lion like we do. For them, a lion kills their cattle, they've taken something away from them. It's a hindrance. An elephant comes into their village, destroys things, eats their crops, it's a hindrance. So what they said was, here's what we're going to do. Let us come into your village, into your land. Let us lease the land from you. We will move your village. We will create photographic safari here, expand the Masai Mara. So again, expanding the footprint, the habitat for the wildlife. You will receive a percentage of every single bed night. We're going to lease the land. We're going to employ people from your village. So when you go on safari, for those of you that have been in Kenya or Tanzania, you see like your tracker, your guide. They're Maasai. They're your spotter, and they have incredible eyes, like an eagle. It's incredible. So that direct benefit has helped move the villages, give them a different area for grazing, and now they're generating revenue as well to buy more cattle, provide education for their kids, because they are semi-nomadic. Their kids will go to school, and then they'll come back to the villages. This crazy guy, Oates, his name is Oates. You'll know they have a lot of funny names in Africa. Oates, civilized, peaceful, early. Oates was my ranger. He's part of Great Plains Conservation. This was the last camp I stayed in Botswana. And he's a bit of a firecracker, but I love this passion. He's a great ranger. He's one of these guys I feel like he can tell his boss off and get away with it. He just has that personality about him. We clicked right away. Within 20 minutes, he started telling me about these elephant chili peppers. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He's making like a chutney or a sauce. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he started telling me he's created a project to help local farmers understand the importance of protecting elephants. This small little farmer that has this small little tract of land, the only thing that he cares about is that crop. That's his livelihood for the whole year. And to him, again, an elephant is a hindrance. So sometimes we look at the big picture and he says, we forget the little picture. That guy, how can we help him? And he started what's called the Elephant Chili Pepper Project. We've become friends. He texts me like 20 times a day. He's always sending me photos and pictures and, and what he's done is he's created a program to create the elephant chili pepper seeds, to grow the chili pepper. He's going to teach the farmers how to approach an elephant, know when they're aggressive, when they're calm, how to make them go away. But if he can protect their crop with chili pepper, those elephants will stay away. Something as simple as that. And he's selling T-shirts. I bought like 2 T-shirts, $30 a piece. But I was like really proud of him that he's kind of taken it at a really macro level and said, sometimes we forget. Let's think like the farmer. It's that small little tract of land that he has. Those carrots, those lettuce, those vegetables. That's gold to him. And that elephant, if he eats it and destroys it, he hates that elephant. That elephant doesn't mean anything to him. But we got to educate that farmer that elephant means everything to this country. So, anyways, me and Oates were on safari, and we went back to a sighting where there was like 15 lions. We were there earlier. It's really hot. If lions are lazy. They'll sit, in the shade and sleep, most of the day. So we went back, and we had a flat tire as we were, positioning the vehicle. And I'll let so Oates. We're surrounded by lions.
Yes.
Everywhere. And what's happening with our situation right now?
We've got flat tire.
Oh, flat tire.
Yeah, flat tire, just flat.
Like flat. Flat, surrounded by like 15 lions?
Yes, I don't know what job we're going to do here.
Do we just sleep here tonight?
Maybe the sleeping or wait until the lions start to move.
Do we have enough GNT?
Probably, yes. I hope so.
Then we're good for a while, my
That's
friend.
right. We'll see how it goes.
We're all set.
We're fine. Thank you.
There's the lions. They're literally right in front of us. So we still changed the tire. We had to bring another vehicle in, kind of position the vehicle as such. And he got out, and we changed the tire, and then we carried on and enjoyed our gin and tonics. So remember I was telling you about bucket list trips to Africa, and I said there's like little buckets inside of the big bucket. For me, this is my little bucket. This is an area called the Selinda Spillway, and it's one of the most epic areas to canoe. But the problem is it's a very short season and it dries up. So you can, the season had just ended, but this is the only thing I ever wanted to do. This was the reason I was going to this camp. And Oates, Crazy Oates, was the only person that was qualified to be on the spillway on the canoe. So Oates was actually supposed to be on his day off. He had 2 days off to go back to his, back to his village. And so I learned that they were stopping the canoeing, and I made this emergency phone call, begged, cried that, I'll wash dishes, I'll do laundry, I'll do housekeeping for 2 days. I just want to canoe the spillway. It's all I've ever wanted to do. So they had to grab Crazy Oates and said, you can't go on your vacation. And he's like, who is this damn crazy agent that's coming here? Tell him there's no water, no way, Anyways, I'm very grateful for Oates because he did spend a full day with me. We were out there for 8 hours. Elephants crossing, splashing, buffalo. I mean, it's just the most magical experience. I mean, for me, it was Christmas on that day. And I'm very thankful for him for making that happen and taking a couple days off to spend with me. So here's me and Oates. This is when it was like 85 degrees, and then it got to like 110, and we went Bedouin style on the right there.
Anything in that water? That's not a hippo.
No, it's too shallow. Yeah, it's too shallow. I mean, you'll see. You might see lions cross. That part of the area is quite wild because they don't see a lot of vehicles. So those animals don't see a lot of humans or vehicles, so they're not habituated to it. But it's absolutely epic. So who goes on safari to Africa? These are my girls, and they're in the back, giggling away. And we've been lucky to go to Africa on a number of occasions. We lived in Cape Town for several months at a time. And Bria on the left, she was 19 months old when she went on her first safari. Ayla on the right, she was 4 years old. And it was the best decision I ever made, was to take them on safari. I still remember the first time they heard an elephant. I'll never forget the sound that came out of their voices, how excited they were, and the noises they were making. You know, to me, it was just the most epic experience to see my kids see a giant bull elephant in its natural habitat, true wildlife. My little one, she's a little bit older. Bria, come on up here. Come on, Ayla. She's my potato chip eating bush baby. So safaris are for everybody. Who are safaris for? It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. Couples, groups, honeymoons, multi-generational, friends. It's for everybody. There's something out there for everyone at different levels, different style. This is Bria. She's 5 now, kindergartner at Hugger. And this is the future heir to the throne, Ayla. She's she's 7, and so they both have had some magical experiences in Africa, and we wanted to teach them about conservation. We wanted them to experience different cultures. We wanted them to be out of their bubble. As a father, I wanted them out of their bubble a little bit. I want them to be citizens of the world, and Africa was a great place to start that. So my beautiful wife, Jessica, come on up here. She's far more pleasant to deal with than I am. But together as a family, we've been really blessed to have some really amazing experiences in Africa. Now, for those of you that have been to Africa, you know that every day ends in Africa a certain way, and we're going to end that same day, this meeting, the same exact way. What we call a sunset here, they call a sundowner there. The meaning of a sundowner has far more of a meaning than what a sunset has here. It means it's a celebration of your day. Get your favorite beverage, gin and tonic, glass of wine, glass of milk, whatever it is. We're now going to celebrate our day together. Whether it's the friends that you made on your safari, whether it's the experiences you had, whatever it was that impacted you, every night you have a sundowner to some capacity. So we're going to have a sundowner now. Amanda, can we get some gin and tonics? A sundowner is a celebration of your day when on safari.
Sundowners are probably one of my favorite things that you experience when you're in Africa.
Whether you're friends or family or a significant other, it's a culmination of your entire day coming together at that one moment.
There's nothing quite like an African sunset. You have the reds, the yellows, the oranges. They're so vivid and they just come out like nothing you've ever seen before.
There's nothing like when you take your first sip, whether it's a glass of wine, refreshing G&T, or a good old-fashioned Coke on ice. It's a validation of what an amazing day you just had on safari.
The sights and the sounds while you're sitting there watching that sunset is just such a magical moment to the ending of your day, of having those crazy experiences with those animals. It's very special.
Cheers to a great safari. And for me, I feel like it's a celebration to have the honor and the privilege to be before you all, to share my passion about Africa, to hear some of your stories, answer some of your questions. So although we didn't have a gin and tonic and a nice bottle of wine to share, but in spirit, thank you for sharing the sundowner moment with me.